Are you ready?
Are you kidding me? That's what?
Yeah, every so often it happens that Ryan is right.
100% right. Not even a little bit right.
Tucker Pullman, 2 points last game.
No kidding.
My man!
Hey, neither does me running shirtless, but that turned out very well.
Welcome to the PP1 podcast.
Okay. And just like that, we're on the air. Not because we want to be, because we have to be. This is a sad day in Canucks history. At the same time, you know what? This isn't the worst loss they've ever had. Far from it. Far from it.
Not even close.
Welcome to the PP1 podcast playoffs post-game show. It's going to be our last post-game show. Won't be our last show. Our last post-game show. I mean, it could be our last show. Depends on how Ted's situation. But we're not going to get into that because he's a little bit fuming. Vancouver Canucks lose 3-2 to the Edmonton Oilers in Game 7, a game that they decided to show up with about 8 minutes left in the third period. Made it fun. Not going to lie. Made it fun. But you can't do that. You can't start the game in the third period. I mean, they made a habit of doing it for the entire playoffs. So kudos to the Canucks, I guess. But the Oilers looked, I mean, the shots were so far and away in the Oilers' favor. It wasn't even funny. Like it was bad. So,
Yeah.
Like they lost. It's over. It is what it is. I mean, I don't know. What do you say to, like, it's such mixed feelings, and I think we have to stick to our guns and saying like they were playing with house money. Unfortunately,
Sure.
they made a lot of money with the house money, so now it's like, well, some of this is our money now, and you know what I mean? It's like, well, we are ahead. It was a tough one to swallow because of where they were. The way they were playing, obviously the Brock thing really sucked. No Demko. I think goaltending was far from the issue. Artur Silov's, like, if they were awarding stars, probably the number one star in that game. If we're being honest, he was unreal. There were 4 saves in that, Ted, that are going to be on highlight reels, regardless of the reason. He was incredible.
Yeah. Future Canucks goaltending seems safe for the time being.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if we can say that it's like a coming out party for Seelovs, right? I mean, he already had the big World Championship run, and he had a solid run last year in the playoffs for Abbey when he was switching back and forth with was it Martin?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Canucks were happy to go into the season with Casey DeSmith and have like a veteran backup after having what happened to them last year with Demko going down and then Martin just falling apart. But this he's going to be part of this team next year from start to finish. So yeah, that was a lot. It was exciting. I think this series was tough because while they looked good in Game 5,
Yeah.
and they looked good in really good. Like obviously they looked good enough to win a bunch of games, but I mean looked really good in a couple of games versus in the Nashville series. I don't think we really saw this team's fastball.
No.
Like we never saw, Lindholm, Miller, Pettersson, Bluger all firing center down the line, right? We never saw that sort of quad center tandem going, right? And we never saw Pettersson be able to elevate a line with Mikheyev, who, man, that guy just cannot buy a bucket. Can't buy a bucket. We'll go back to NBA Jam on that one. Hogs had some moments in the series where he looked really good. He also had some moments where he looked really bad. But we never were able to see Pettersson's line elevate to be dangerous where Edmonton had to account for them, right? So, yeah, I mean, as good as Seelovs was, I have to think that there's, 4 or 5, pucks that Demko gets to that you just don't expect a goalie to get to, right? Like that's kind of what he's known for, right? Like making those saves like
The
that save
boost
he made
bomb
in game
again.
1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that save he made in game 1 in the Nashville series, right? Or was it the Edmonton series?
Nashville.
Yeah,
Or-
just like
Yeah.
just rough, right? And then Besser going down was terrible. Obviously, like they say it's not life threatening, but it's a blood clot. Like I don't care what anybody says, if left unchecked, that's bad news, right? So
Mhm.
we just never really saw the Canuck fastball. And while I don't think we saw the Oilers fastball 100%, because it didn't seem like McDavid was really rolling in this
No.
series, I felt like Draisaitl was by far the more dangerous player, or Bouchard for that matter.
Yes.
The Vancouver Canucks hung with this team that's expected to win the Stanley Cup, and drove them right to the brink, and were a shot away from putting this thing into overtime. With Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and arguably the most ridiculous team in the league, right? So I don't know what else we can ask for. I know there's like disappointment that they're out, and I'm rambling here a little bit, so I'm sorry, but this was, by all intents and purposes, a successful season. I don't know if we can chalk it up to anything other than that. I think there's going to be a crazy offseason coming, but yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think that this team can't clear some things up and make another push for the playoffs next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. This was absolutely a successful season. And again, we'll do a full post-mortem, as a show. This was just a post game. But I mean, there was massive success. I mean, 50 wins.
Huge.
You get Brock scoring 40. You get, JT Miller had like an unreal season. You have Quinn Hughes likely winning the Norris. You've got, if we're going to awards, the Canucks are going to clean up a few, hands down. Like he's not going to, Demko's not going to win the Vezina, unfortunately, but realistically, just based on games played, likely he probably would have won it had he continued going.
It would have been close. Yeah, I mean,
so you've got those things to look at. You look at an organization, an ownership group, management group that saw what was going on, and they thought, you know what, there is a good enough team here this year to win, and they doubled down on it, and they made moves. They didn't just like make a move to, try to be competitive. They made moves early on. And then, the deadline, that's a tough one. I'm a big fan of Tyler Toffoli, and we're not going to get into that again. But they made moves early enough so that guys could gel in time. Elias Lindholm obviously came alive in the playoffs. His regular season with the Canucks sucked.
it was good.
But at the same time, like the playoffs are, you talk about contracts and guys earning contracts in the regular season. Like realistically, push comes to shove, you're earning them in the playoffs. Like you might be playing for free, but you're earning that hero status. And I think there's too many good things to talk about with this team. It sucks. This is a team I think there was enough belief in. You can't be the cardiac kids every single game and expect to win. Geez, I went to full doubt mode when it was 3-0 because it just didn't feel like a game they were going to come back in. And man, did I almost get shot in the foot with that one when they scored 2. I'm like, they're going to do this again. My heart was racing for that last 2 minutes because all of a sudden I thought, I'm like, they're going to do it. They're going to do it again.
and they almost did.
And they almost did. So I think like you look at it, this is one of those seasons where like, yeah, they lost in the playoffs, but this was a team like Rick Tocchet made a great point. He goes, they put respect back on the jersey and in the city. That's a huge thing to say because this team, we're Canucks Twitter, Canucks Central, whatever you want to call it. We are the harshest critics. And I think if we can hold our heads high and think like, man, I'm jacked for Canucks hockey next year, because I do think with a couple moves, this team might be pretty dangerous again. Maybe not win a Stanley Cup, but we now know that not a window necessarily, but they're now you can throw your hat in the ring as a team that could contend. Not a contender, but you're a playoff team, hands down.
Yeah, I mean, we talked. I mean, it's a great point. I think we talked about the fact that this team was having to learn hardships and lessons on the fly because it hadn't been together a long time
Yeah,
at the start of this year, and like I think for all the talk about PD and what we were expecting from PD and JT stepped up and showed out, and Brock Besser looks like he's a hardened playoff performer already.
hmm
Those are all really good things, except for I think PD and Hughes I think could be better, right? I mean, I think it's quite obvious that they needed more from Pedersen early. But I think when you look at guys like Bouchard and Makar and Heiskanen,
yeah,
Hughes does not stack up with those guys at this point in time, right? Obviously, it's very clear that he is at or superior to their level in the regular season right now, but playoffs are a different animal. So this season, this hardship, these 2 rounds are now, a teaching moment. They're full lesson mode for what work needs to be done to step up and improve and be better for next season. And just like the previous season was to Hughes, goes back, has that great offseason, steps up and has a Norris caliber season. He's going to have to do the same thing next year, put that Norris style season together in the regular season, and then figure out what Conn Smythe or playoff hardened version of Quinn Hughes looks like for playoffs next year. Because while he was great and he did log humongous minutes, he didn't have the same offensive impact that this team requires him to have to win games. So I'm not saying that this whole thing is hung on him, but I think even he would tell you that there's a better version of Quinn Hughes in the playoffs that exists than the one that was here for this playoff run.
absolutely. I think, yeah, he's not just a Norris Trophy skater, but that's a lot of what we got in round 2. Like he factored in as far as puck possession went. I
Sure,
think he was an
possession,
absolute minute
defending.
muncher. But I mean, that's it. That, like, if we're being honest with ourselves, Quinn Hughes didn't have himself a great round 2. Overall, his playoffs were pretty good. Like I said, possession wise, he was there, but I mean, he wasn't a difference maker. Again, Pedersen towards the end of this round started to show a little bit more, but even still, like, tonight would have been one of those games where he would have scored that goal. Like, he would have scored on that play, or he just, there's just little things. I mean, it's going to be a tough offseason for, I think, those 2 specifically, because you've seen what it looks like to lose, and like lose the way you lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to the team that you lost to. Because I mean, Dallas
He had a
is,
chance. They had him on the ropes.
honestly, I think Dallas, as good as Edmonton looked against Vancouver, and we said this a couple days ago, I'm not going to say they're going to shred Edmonton, but it's going to be a tough series, and I don't think it's going 7. I could see Dallas winning in 5, which is, I just think, because they're so, like, that team just looks like battle tested every single game. Like, they don't want to be in more games than they need to, and Dallas just gets it done. That, again, that's a whole other thing. Going back to the Canucks quickly, I think a guy like Quinn Hughes, like, he's got the captaincy this year. That was a big deal. PD obviously got his contract. That's a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, when it really, 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 really mattered, like, if you want to call it, if we're going to do it in a macrocosm, like, it was a no-show when it mattered. And the guys that were, bumping and grinding, like the Connor Garlands, Dakota Joshua, Zadorov, I thought still had a decent game, a couple of flubs, but whatever.
He's a difference maker, though, right? I mean, not every
Sure.
game. You can't expect Nikita Zadorov to be a difference maker every game, but go through that list, Ryan. Like, yeah, hit it again. Who were, in your mind, think about 5 players, aside from Artur Silas, who's really just too young to know any better.
Yeah.
Who were the difference makers on this team night after night?
Well, I mean, I named 3 already: Joshua, Garland, and Zadorov. From there, I think,
Lindholm, Miller,
I was going to say Lindholm and Miller. That's probably,
Besser. I mean, you're talking about all the guys now at this point. These are all the veteran guys that have been through some of these wars before, right?
Yeah.
Who have experienced levels of hardship, and I don't think that happens by accident, right? I think there is something more that sort of comes out of a player once you've been through these types of losses, and all of those guys, all of them have been through those tough losses.
hmm
And
You know what's
so they're
crazy?
going to need that. PD and Hughes are going to need that.
I was just thinking about this just as you said that. So you go back to, I mean, the Canucks don't have the most amazing history. We all know this. But I mean, the losses that they endured against Chicago, those were learning lessons. It was like, we have to climb the mountain against this one team. And I think we're it. The loss against Minnesota, I think we all thought that series was over. So they were upset. This was like a learning lesson this time. This wasn't losing to Calgary in 2015 or 14, whatever it was, where that team was again, we're like, oh, well, we're in the playoffs. We're probably not going to win the series. This is a team, I mean, even in the bubble, like that was a unique experience. But even that team had there were some flashes where that team actually could have fluked a little bit and actually gone a little bit further. That being said, this team has a unique losing experience where I think they've never really had this many pieces together and lost the way they lost. I think when they were going against Chicago, like they pretty much had all the pieces. They just needed to get through their head that they
They
could
just
win.
need to put it together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So
Grant in the chat says, it really feels like this. They actually, really feels like they actually became a team this year, not just a club. They cared for each other. Yeah, like this team grew this year. Like it really did. Like I think, especially the young guys on the squad, as this team gets just handed off a little bit to the younger players on this team. Like it, I think they're now starting to form an identity of like that whole live and die for each other on the ice, right? Like
yeah.
it doesn't really any longer. They still have spats obviously in practices, right? But that's all part of growing. There's still, JT laying into Dakota Joshua on the bench about a stupid mistake, right? That's all going to be stuff that
Accountability.
helps these guys grow. But I mean, there's huge strides were made this season, and I think so much of that has to do with this management team working hard to sign grizzled playoff vets that galvanize this roster,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I look at Grant's, we were just talking about lessons, right? I can't handle many more learning lessons. You know what? They to be where this team was, this organization was 1 year ago, to be where it was a couple years ago when Jim and John were there and Travis Green, to flip the switch, to get the Boudreaux bump, and to learn a little bit there, and then to get Rick Tocchet in and basically accountability and, basically be resilient and learn lessons and be fair to the guys. This was one of those learning lessons where you think like it it took so long to get to this point, but it really doesn't feel like it's going to be very long before the next point.
It better not be.
Like, I mean, who
It
knows?
better not be. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that for free.
But you know what I mean? Like this, it was the doom and gloom for 10 years. And then all of a sudden, like this was quite a unique season, and we could be in for a rude awakening possibly next year. It's possible.
Sure.
But at the same time, I look at this and I think there were lessons learned. And I think there isn't a huge jump to go. I mean, it's a massive hurdle from round to round, but I don't think it's as far now that we've seen what this team is. I mean, they're gonna have to make all their big decisions. The Philip Hroneks, there's contracts coming up, right? And they're gonna have to figure it out. But they've also realized that they probably have a few guys. I mean, you're willing to put Linus Karlsson in there. You're willing to, um, I'm kind of surprised they didn't have what's his pickle? Someone brought him up. Archie
Lots.
Baines.
Oh,
Todd
Baines, yeah.
Colson got scratched tonight, which I thought was an interesting call. But again, whatever. These are minutia stuff. I think there's something on that farm club that we can get excited about because there's enough on the big club as well, where it's gonna be a battle again next season. I mean, It's been so long since we felt this way. Like, it hurts, man. Like, I had texted you. I'm like, we're doing a show, and I don't know why. Like, I think it's just like talking through the pain, which is what we've done for 5 years. But I mean, there's real feeling here now, and like, we'll go to work tomorrow. Our personal lives will go back to normal. We'll be able to play baseball again. We'll be able to hang out. But I mean, this showed everybody something. Like, I'm going to say it again. Rick Tocchet mentioned that, he put respect back on the jersey. They were cheering that team out of the arena after, I mean, they almost didn't even deserve that in this game. And I thought, I'm like, put one more goal and make it 4-0. Let's go back to Boston. Like, just make it hurt again so that we can go to bed the way we've always gone to bed. And then they made it something. So, I mean, even at the end, as much as it didn't look like they should have been in that game, they still made you think, like, we're going to show you one more thing we've got. And I think going to next year, that gives me hope personally. I think they need to rely on a tandem a lot more as a goaltending tandem. I think they need to make sure that Pettersson doesn't just assume his money or he's going to get traded. Like, there's a lot of things they got to talk about. But I don't know. I got hope for next season, personally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, Grant says gave me hope again, hope that I'd lost Reeves. I think so many Canucks fans are in that same boat, Grant. I think
Mhm.
that's it's a good call. I think had it not been for this show, I mean, losing hope would have been quite easy, right? But at least there was stuff to talk about every single week, and
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about that before. How there really is no shortage of things to talk about with this team, and after this, I think it's going to be a lot for Edmonton to shake through Dallas, and Grant alluded to again. Hopefully, didn't galvanize this team with this playoff performance in round two, right? I mean, I feel like it's going to be hard for Edmonton to get the rest of the way through if we're talking about the next round. And I think anytime you expend that much energy, and I know Connor McDavid is the best player in the world, and I know that Leon Draisaitl is right up there with him. But I've seen Connor play 25, 24, 25, 26 minutes a night in, night out for a couple of games in a row. And I know that he can do that, but I don't know what all the rest of them can do. I know that Draisaitl can play banged up in this hurt, but I don't know what the rest of this roster can do in terms of a depth standpoint. I mean, I thought that this team had the depth to go the distance with them, and I think it was pretty damn close. And who knows with a Vezina caliber goaltender and a 40 goal scorer in your lineup if it's any different. I don't know. All I know is that this team had what it had, and it pushed them to the brink. And I think it's going to be difficult for them to get by Dallas, but we'll see.
Does it make you, I mean, you don't have a lot of hair. I have a lot of hair. Does it make you want to pull your hair out that power play as a
Oh,
whole
it's terrible.
was
Please
just like,
decline the power play. Can we just decline the power play because it's not doing anything?
what?
Um,
Unreal. Like,
I saw somebody a tweet early on. I can't remember who it was. I want to give credit, but I can't remember who did it. Said Alex Edler looking down from the rafters, still watching a failed drop pass on a power play, not gain the zone. Still, after all this time.
it's fitting he was there to do that too. I mean, at least he
Yeah.
wasn't looking off Besser anymore, so that's good. But like, that power play as a whole, I mean, really, even in the first round, how in the heck do you not score a goal?
That's just
Period.
ugly.
Just
I mean,
period.
credit to that Oiler power play, and Knobloch did a phenomenal job pushing buttons and pulling strings over there. I think that's an intelligent coach. I think he game planned properly for this squad on how it attacks and how they whip the puck around, where they're being aggressive, where they're being passive. Um, Again, with a limited roster depth wise, top end, it's the thickest in the league. Don't get me wrong. But I think he's done a he's done a really good job. I think he was masterful on how they planned during special teams, and the power play started to fizzle out towards the end there because I think Vancouver had sort of figured it out, but the power play and that penalty kill end of it just never faltered. There was so many opportunities for Vancouver to take hold at a specific moments during these games that
Yeah.
it just never could because the power play just stalled and took away any momentum that they were gaining out of shifts that penalties were drawn in the offensive zone.
Like, you gotta in game 7, I mean, there's a
You got to
few
score.
plays.
You got to score on a 4-minute double minor. You got to score.
I mean, it was the kind of play too. Like you get one goal on that, even one instead of two. You score one on that 4 minute. That changes the game dramatically. Like there were opportunities for the Canucks to win this game, and it
Sure.
didn't have to look the way it looked. It could have been a different game had it, you know, they actually capitalized on their opportunities, and it just looked so pedestrian once again. And like you're just watching, and we're all shaking our collective heads, and we're all eye rolling, and like, here we go again.
Oh, not another power play.
They've got all these guys that can score, and none of them are doing it. I mean, congrats to Phil Peronic for finally scoring in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean,
Puck's on net.
it made me laugh. I just thought that was so funny. Like, well, I guess the last game is the best game to score your first, but you know, just silly. Like there were crucial parts to this playoff run that could have made them so much better, so much more dangerous. The power play, probably the main one, because if you're getting power plays and you're scoring goals on those power plays, you don't have to worry about the Oilers' power play because they're likely going to start taking more penalties. Because
Well,
if
I
you're
mean,
bearing on them, I don't know.
that was 2011, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they basically said, "We dare you to take a penalty against us," and they converted all the way up to Boston.
yeah. The problem is on this time it was 2 rounds of the same thing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you kept hoping that they were going to sort of find their way out of that sort of like stagnant offense, and it just never materialized. It just never materialized.
You got so much talent there. And I'm not even going to include Brock in this because the fact that they probably still could have won that game without him tonight should tell you all you need to know.
There
Like
you go.
it's frustrating. So who's to blame? Yeah, I was going to talk about like the system tonight. I think it just looked like they were like pucks were bouncing off sticks. Like nobody was confident carrying the puck. There's definitely a lot of, I don't know if it was necessarily non-confidence, but I mean, it probably creeped in a little bit. But I guess at the same time, they still kind of were confident they could come back in that game. So it's just stupidity, just making plays, not capitalizing on opportunities. And that's all. That's what the playoffs is, right? I mean, 5-on-5, the Canucks are a pretty electric team, but they got opportunities, and that's where you bury teams. And they weren't even remotely close to doing that.
No.
Not even remotely close. So anyway, I don't want to dig in this too long because it's 10 o'clock and it's a school night or a work night for some of us. I'm not gonna lie, I had a great golf game today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw you bombing slow-mo shots there.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I made a couple great putts today as well. Chipped out from on top of the hole for about 30 yards out, rolled down the hill into the hole. It's probably one of the greatest shots I've ever made, and 3 people saw it, so that was great. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's what I was looking forward to the most. Obviously, Game 7. I mean, it's Game 7. This is what we live for. It sucked. I was excited for this game until I guess that first goal, and then things changed. So it is what it is. We're gonna try to do a show this week, depending on Ted's computer setup. If it allows for him, we'll do a proper.
I just knew, like, so I had a power bump. That's why we're so late. I had a power bump during the game, and I went in to sort of go look at the computer, and like nothing was working. So I was like, sweet, it's pretty fucked up. There's no way that I'm going to look at it prior to the game, and I'm not missing a game to go look at a computer so I can work on my computer for podcast stuff. And then you text me saying we're going. It's all hands on deck. Take this whole thing apart. Couldn't get it back up and running again. So here I am with a bubble gum and duct tape holding this thing together and bang a show out.
Man, you're a grinder. Canucks should have had you tonight.
Yeah.
Or at least working a workable enough computer to show the plays that they needed to make.
The score would have been a lot uglier than it was tonight.
That's true. That's true. This was fun, man. This was a different experience. It was nice to be able to do post-game shows again that weren't in the middle of
Good
the
season.
summer. But thank you, everybody. Grant, obviously, for coming by a lot. For everybody else that has come for our post-game shenanigans, there's like a lot of post-game shows this year, which is awesome. And if there's still ones going on when we're down, by all means, go check them out. Shout out to Pucks on Net for giving us the love that they gave. I know they're giving us some love. And yeah, man, like Canucks season's over, but the Canucks aren't over. They're going to come back. It's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll have the skate jersey.
Yeah, Canucks are a thing again.
Maybe we'll have the skate jersey as a bigger deal next season. And yeah, we'll do a proper show shortly. Hopefully this week before.
Yeah, we got draft coming up. We got free agency coming up. We're gonna have lots of roster decisions to make. There's a ton of expiring contracts. This team
I'll have a
is gonna
haircut.
look very different.
I'll have a haircut.
You'll have a haircut.
I will. And a shave. It's pretty bad.
Okay, there you go.
Pretty bad. Yeah, thanks everybody. This has been the PP1 podcast playoffs post-game show. I got that finally right. We do thank you all for coming. Go Canucks, go. What a season. Back to your personal lives. On that note, on behalf of Teddy Wong, I'm Ryan.